Welcome again to Leadership Synergized. Joining us in his second episode is Dr. Trevor Apple, the school superintendent for Springs Valley Community Schools, located in French Lick, Indiana, the very southern part of the state. Dr. Apple, again, thank you so much for your time and agreeing to join us for this second episode.
We're glad to be here again, Kevin.
The value you provided in the first episode is tremendous, and we were talking about the stillness approach and sometimes as leaders, how we're challenged. In particular, I don't know about your experience, but just speaking for me a moment, it seemed like when the multiple priorities, meaning when you're a school leader, when you're an educator, every member of a school community sees a priority they believe should be number one. And I'm not saying they're wrong by any stretch. Everybody has that. But the role of that educational and school leader is to discern just what is that one item that we can truly focus on that pays dividends when it comes to educating our children in that regard. So the difficulty to slow down in one way is that it becomes a paradox because we're being pulled to go faster by society, perhaps by state mandates, by federal mandates, by school community expectations, or by our own expectations in that regard. So I really appreciate where you provided the value and how you work to slow things down, have restorative time, reflective time on a daily basis to ensure that self-awareness and that you are slowing it down and staying focused right where the core needs to be. That is very important for any educator. That really walks us into something. Dr. Apple recently in the past year or so, year plus, became a grandfather for the first time. Something I've experienced 4 times, and each time has happened. It's a transformation, Dr. Apple. We think about transformation. We think about driving a big change within our organization that magnifies something brand new that is going to be highlighted. But I don't know about you. As I reflect back, the moment my grandchildren were born, the oldest will be 9 in May, the youngest is a year and a half. Each one of those 4 moments is probably the top 4 transformation points of my life.
Yeah, it is. It was certainly the day before I became a grandparent and the day after I became a grandparent was certainly what I would call a touchstone moment in my life, particularly. It's hard to put in words how that change happens so quickly. You're a father, you're a husband, you're a son, and then you love your kids. And then the next day, there's this new little human who suddenly you find a whole new level of love that you didn't know you had. And just, hey, I'm a papaw now. Papaw is what I'd like to be called. She hasn't started saying those things yet, and then you start reflecting back on I personally did reflect back on my relationship with my grandparents and just what a tremendous learning experience that was, what great bonding moments I had with them. And right away thinking, I want to recreate that with my granddaughter, Harper. And we live a good distance away, but thanks to technology, we're able to FaceTime on a regular basis. We make that drive a couple times a month. And it's just, for both Teresa and I, just been a totally transformative moment.
I'm so happy you've been able to receive that grace and blessing from God and have that opportunity. Every time I ponder our faith, the faith that I know you and I share, and we've talked about at times, and we talk about our grandkids, the George Strait song, I Saw God Today, just comes right to heart because there is no more poignant to the heart message than looking into the child of a newborn or looking into the eyes of a newborn, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned in our first episode, the whole aspect of your restorative intent is to keep things in perspective. And grandchildren certainly do that if they do nothing else for those of us blessed to be grandparents.
Yes. Yeah, they do.
So as you consider your leadership growth, Dr. Apple, over your career, education, non-education, personally, professionally, there's been a lot of different things from cell phones to IBM PS2s to laptops to smartwatches to just anything and everything else out there now. AI technology now looking like it's coming into the classrooms, already started perhaps. Talk about transformation, right? There's been a lot of transformation at times, and I always prided myself in being one who I love change. Life is change. If I get up in the morning, things have changed. But as I reflect back, I think I had more of an anchor in adjusting and transforming than I needed to have in those areas. Talk a bit for our listeners and viewers, your leadership experience. How have you been able to complete transformational journeys successfully?
My wife would tell you that I'm not a person who likes change. I like routine and I like habit. And if I get out of those routines, I have a tendency to get nasty. But the thing I've learned in the last 4 years doing this job is that life is moving forward and accelerating quickly. We're seeing changes not only at a societal level, in education, technology, and we're trying to grasp all that change and pull it all together and still provide a great education for our kids. We're trying to provide them education for some things. The way things are going, we're not even sure what jobs they'll be when they graduate, or if they go to college or trade school or the military or whatever they do. So there's just so much going on. But at the same time, there's just a lot better access to resources. I've found that something that's been transformative for me was just a support network, having a group of individuals that I can count on to help me through the change, help navigate that. Our county superintendents here that we talk frequently on the phone many times a week, or text messages or emails, and help each other through those. So that support has helped me through the transformative times, has helped me transform as a person and as a leader. And alongside of that, just learning to focus on the things that I can do well, and utilizing those things has helped me through all these rough times.
Dr. Apple, one of the things you said there clicked in my mind a little bit, the value of consistency. And I don't know that any other industry, if you want to call it an industry, field, if you will, other than education, maybe gets bombarded with, what's the proper word I want to use? Change direction, or direction for change, as much as education does. Talk, if you would, a little bit and share from a leader's perspective when those things are coming at you, whether it's from state legislatures, federal legislatures, school community expectations. How valuable is it to ensure consistency and not to allow change basically to be the race car going around the track 200 miles an hour, every day?
Yeah, that consistency is important. You can chase all the new fads, and this program comes out or this initiative comes out. Hey, let's try this. And you get your teachers on board with something, or your administrators. And then the next new wave comes out and try that. And you know how those things come and go, and some of them cycle back, some of them don't. But to me, I try to be consistent. I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but I just try to be consistent in the way I make decisions and approach things, right or wrong. So consistency is important for me individually, but also just letting your staff know that we're not going to chase every thing that comes down the pike. We're not going to get distracted with this squirrel over here or that one over there. We're going to keep education and treating people the right way as our core. And so that consistency gives everybody involved just a solid foundation to work from.
Said, and that segues well into my next question, the topic area, Dr. Apple. And yeah, there's probably not been more of a challenging time than right now when it comes to a leader's ability to inspire and influence others. And without that ability, leaders struggle to have sustained success. And I can see, to your point, where consistency plays a part into that piece. How do you find your ability to sustain that inspiration, that influencing options? What are some tools, approaches you use that growing leaders hearing and watching us now might be able to take and build on?
Yeah, the main thing I can think of there is just trying to be consistent. Inspiring people is a challenge for me. I'm by nature an introvert, and I would prefer to avoid confrontation. I just and more comfortable being an introvert. So being that person who's going to be out there, outgoing, rallying people to a cause. Some people are really good at that, but that's not a strength of mine. But one of my strengths is to try to have a calm demeanor in situations, to try to project that calmness and try to project that consistency, to be consistent with, as I said, I'm not always going to make people happy with directions we go or decisions I make, but at least they probably will know where I'm coming from because I do try to be consistent. And I think that in the end, that can be an inspiring thing of itself in the absence of a dynamic personality. Just people can count on you to be consistent.
Yeah, that's a great point, Dr. Apple. Inspiration, sometimes when we hear the word being inspiring, we think of the one for the Gipper, do it for the Gipper type speech, right? The rah aspect, or coach going in at halftime and yelling and screaming in those aspects. But really, can just being the same person time after time, regardless of the situation, can lead to inspiring others through just providing stability and hope for them.
And I'm not saying that I'm consistent every single time, but over time, the majority of the times, I think I'm using the same, how do you say it, approaching things the same way. And I think people see that, appreciate that. And yeah, it's just trying to stay true to my values seems to result sometimes in some influence more often than not.
Having known you for 4 decades plus, Dr. Apple, I'm not sure I could find anyone who's been more consistent with living their values than you. And I commend you for that piece. And that walks me to my next question around what is your experience in your leadership roles tell you about how a leader can maintain a relevant focus, not balance per se, but focus on love in the agape way?
Yeah, intentionality is a key, having a focus on it and being aware of the need for it. I feel like that I'm always more effective when my relationships are a priority, starting with God and then moving out to my family and then coworkers, friends, etc., on down to myself. There has to be a healthy balance between. That doesn't always mean an equal balance. My relationship with God and with my family carry more weight than those other relationships. But that's okay. I believe that's the way it should be. But I just try to be intentional, make sure that and again, as an introvert, I'm not always good at it, but I know it's something I have to work on. So therefore, that intentionality helps me focus on that, and then I can be more effective.
I appreciate that. And I could see where that could help you develop those effective relationships. You talked about your relationships in faith with God and with your family, but even those professional relationships on the day in, day out basis, or the one or two a year where the paths cross in that piece.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's important too. You have to be intentional about that as well. And I come across a lot of people in a day, and with my principles, I think about that. I try to be open and be available to them, be available to my staff. It's a different sort of relationship than with my family, but important nonetheless. And so just being really, and it's so for both, the commonality is it's being available. It's just being available in a different way.
I like that. I like that availability. When you think of your career as a leader, Dr. Apple, and you and I have worked a bit the past year plus on the Gallup Strengths, the Strengths program, the top 5 most dominant, top 10 high strengths. What have you found that you've been able to do to ensure you work in your strength zone or beyond your strength zone, and that it doesn't become just a comfortable place to sit back in?
Yeah. This is something that's relatively new to me. As you said, we've been working through this and these concepts are new. So at this point, not I don't feel I'm anywhere near where I need to be with that. Still a work in process, but it just has to be a mindset of knowing what you can do and not trying to force the things that I'm not very strong at. As I said, I'm not going to go out and I'm not going to have inspiring speeches or I'm not the humorous kind of guy that a Roger Fisher would be, but I can look at those strengths that I do have and know that, okay, I can use these and I can be just as, even though I'm different than that guy or this guy, these strengths of mine I can build on. But it's a mindset. You just have to be, again, focused and intentional about using them.
I know I've said this a lot in our 2 episodes together, but Dr. Apple, I love the peace mindset aspect, and it's a value add thing that I'm taking away, which just works to say that sometimes when we look at it, and learner, I think, is one of your top 5, top 10 strengths. And if you can't tell, Dr. Apple is fully committed to learner. He has significant strengths and talents in that area as well as many others. But that whole mindset aspect, sometimes mental fatigue has allowed me to step away a bit, and I lost mindset, lost the intentionality, lost the focus. And it makes it more difficult to step back up at the point you were in visiting a decision, perhaps reviewing data, or trying to deal with an adversity.
Yeah. Yeah, that's part of the process, and you just have to keep chipping away, and eventually that will take hold and become what you do. Just like anything else, you invest time in it and you practice it and you begin to see its value, and it becomes something you do normally.
Thank you for that, Dr. Apple. As we get ready to close here, just a few more items I'd like to hit upon, and would like to give you an opportunity. Trevor Apple, Dr. Apple's career experiences. If there's one big takeaway you would like to pay forward for someone who may be tuning in, listening, watching at this time through your experiences, what would that be?
Make time for yourself. Yeah, we've covered that. Just, I can't emphasize that enough. That would look different for different people. For me, several times a day, I feel like I have to stop and step back. But I have found that it improves my mental outlook, my job performance, my relationships, and I'm actually more effective in this role when I take time for myself.
Dr. Stephen Covey's 7th habit was all about sharpening the saw, and I failed that test and that habit more often than most. And my saw had some pretty dull teeth on it at moments. My team needed some sharpness, and they got cheated out of that piece. So I can relate to that. Dr. Apple, we've really enjoyed having you. But before we go, learner's one of your top strengths. Where are you in your growth journey? Are you there?
I'm not there. I'm still learning, Kevin. Growth is a never-ending process, in my opinion. It's something always to be that you should strive for. I look at it as liken it to a pruning process. Sometimes that growth is hard and some things have to be pruned away. But we know that when a plant grows, it grows best when it's taken care of. Someone is watering it, feeding it, and pruning it. And that pruning doesn't feel good, but it produces growth. And I look at that, I look at setbacks, I look at challenges as that pruning process, and I think that something better will come from it.
Excellent. Thank you. I had no doubt you had more work to do in that growth journey. Dr. Apple, the input that you provided, the guidance, and just sharing your background and experiences, and just helping identify who Trevor Apple is. From my perspective, you're an excellent leader. You do great things. I know great is a term we overuse at times, but when it comes to describing you, I think you're a great leader in that aspect, and I appreciate what you've shared. And if there's someone out there who would like to reach out and they feel like maybe they've been on the same path as Dr. Apple, Trevor Apple, and maybe would just like to explore a bit more your words of wisdom, how could they reach out to you?
Yeah, Kevin, that reaching out to me is a little bit limited. I'm not a social media guy, but they can reach me here at my school email. That's Apple, just my last name, at svalley.k12.in.us. We'd love to hear from some people and hear about their experiences as well.
Thank you for that, and you won't regret it. Dr. Apple, thank you so much, my friend. God bless you. I appreciate you. I appreciate you for all you do on behalf of our children.
Thank you, Kevin. It was an honor to be with you today.
I hope you've enjoyed having Dr. Apple as much as I've enjoyed having him, and I know as much as he has enjoyed being there to share his experiences. And Dr. Apple, as I hopefully have exhibited as well, is here to help pay it forward. He doesn't take anything for granted, and he's always ready and has his arms open to help you if you'd like to reach out with him. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Leadership Synergize. Remember, synergizing your leadership doesn't mean rushing through it, doesn't mean multitasking beyond what you're capable of doing. It means to slow things down, to be open to serve self, to work to transform self so you can transform others through influencing, loving, family, building effective relationships, and leading through, within, and beyond our strength zone. Until next time, thank you for joining us.